In the middle of a heavy storm, a single father rushes to the job interview that could change his life. But on the way, he stops to help a stranger, without knowing she is a CEO who will soon change everything. What happens next will leave you speechless. Don't forget to drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button so you won't miss the next inspiring story. The rain fell like a heavy curtain that swallowed the morning. The wind cut through the air, carrying the scent of wet earth and cracked asphalt. Adrian Ward slammed the door of his old truck and drew in a deep breath. In his jacket pocket, his phone buzzed. A reminder. Job interview. 9 o'clock sharp. He looked at the half-flooded road ahead, then saw it. A black sedan tilted at the edge of the muddy shoulder. Its rear tires sank deep, hazard lights blinking weakly like a fading breath. A woman stepped out in a pale gray coat, her heels sinking instantly, her hair plastered to her cheeks by the storm. Her face was calm yet strained, the look of someone used to control but now stripped of it. Seconds ticked by. Adrian thought about the rent waiting on the kitchen table. He thought about his son's shoes, worn thin at the toes. He thought about the promise he made to himself that today everything would change. The city towers loomed faint in the distance. Then his eyes returned to the stranded car. He made his choice. He walked toward the sedan. The woman struggled to free her heel from the sucking mud. Her voice cracked through the rain. "It's fine. I can handle this." Adrian splashed through the rising water, his boots heavy with mud. The woman glanced up, startled by his presence. Her eyes swept over him, a tall man in a worn flannel shirt, cap pulled low, soaked through by the storm. "You're going to twist your ankle like that," Adrian said, his voice steady against the roar of the rain. "I said I'm fine," she snapped, pulling harder at her shoe, frustration spilling into her tone. The mud held tight, refusing to let go. Without another word, Adrian crouched down. His calloused hands gripped the heel, and with one sharp tug, the shoe came free. He handed it to her without meeting her gaze. "Get in the car. I'll handle this." She hesitated, clutching the shoe like it was proof of something. "You don't even know me." "Doesn't matter," he replied flatly. "You're stuck. I've got a truck." Adrian turned and trudged back to his old pickup. Rust flaked at the wheel wells, the paint dulled to a tired gray. But in the bed lay heavy chains, tools that had seen storms before. He hooked them to her bumper with practiced ease, his movements quick and precise. The engine roared, the chain tightened, and with a groan the sedan pulled free from the mud. Water gushed around the tires as the car lurched back onto solid ground. By the time she climbed inside, shivering, Adrian was already walking away through the storm, not waiting for thanks. Something tugged at her chest, sharp and strange. She rolled down the window, her voice chasing him. "Wait. You're soaked. At least take this." A folded bill extended in her trembling hand. Adrian stopped, his jaw tightening. Finally, he looked at her. "Keep it. I'm already late." "For what?" she asked. He paused, rain dripping from the brim of his cap. "A job interview." And then he walked on, vanishing into the downpour. Adrian climbed into his truck, his clothes dripping, water pooling on the cracked leather seat. The dashboard clock glared at him, 9:12. His stomach sank. The interview had started at 9 sharp. He twisted the key. The old engine coughed, rattled, then caught with a growl. Wipers squealed across the windshield, smearing rain instead of clearing it. "Perfect," he muttered, punching the gas. The truck rattled down the flooded streets, every pothole sending a jolt through his bones. His mind replayed the answers he had practiced for weeks. How to explain his time in the Marines, how to talk about the small shop he once ran, how to convince them he was more than just another desperate man. But a voice deep inside whispered it didn't matter anymore. 3 blocks from the high-rise, traffic froze. A wreck ahead, cars bumper to bumper. Adrian slammed the steering wheel, the horn echoing uselessly in the storm. Even if he abandoned the truck and ran, he'd still be late. By the time he reached the building, soaked to the bone, it was nearly 10. The receptionist barely looked up from her screen. "They've moved on to the next candidate," she said flatly. Adrian's throat tightened. "Can I at least—" "I'm sorry, sir," she cut in. "The hiring manager's schedule is full." You can reapply in 6 months. 6 months. His voice cracked. He could barely survive 6 weeks without steady work. He forced a nod, swallowing the lump in his throat. Thank you for your time. The drizzle outside felt colder than the storm. He shoved his hands deep into his pockets, each step back to his truck heavier than the last. Bills. Rent. His son's shoes. The weight of everything pressed harder with every breath. Halfway down the block, the low purr of an engine slowed beside him. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop, tinted windows gleaming even under the gray sky. The passenger window slid down. It was her, the woman from the mud. You missed it, didn't you? Her voice was softer now, almost guilty. Adrian shifted on the wet sidewalk. Yeah, but you're on your way. So, worth it. She studied him for a long moment, then said, calm and certain, get in. Adrian froze on the sidewalk, rain dripping from the brim of his cap. What? He asked, uncertain if he'd heard her right. Get in the car, the woman repeated, her tone firm but not unkind. I owe you more than dry shoes. Something in her voice carried weight, the kind that came from years of giving orders and being obeyed. Against every instinct screaming at him to walk away, Adrian opened the door and slid into the leather seat. The warmth of the SUV wrapped around him instantly, a stark contrast to the storm outside. For the first time, he noticed the details: the stitched leather, the faint trace of perfume, and a folder on her lap stamped with a silver company logo he vaguely recognized. She glanced at him, lips curling into the faintest smile. My name is Victoria Hale, she said, CEO of Hale Dynamics. Adrian blinked, the name hitting him like thunder. Hale Dynamics, the very company he had just been turned away from. He stared, disbelief etched in his face. You're the CEO? Last I checked, she replied lightly, though her eyes were sharp, measuring. And unless I'm mistaken, you were heading to an interview at my company this morning. Adrian's jaw tightened. Yeah, I was. And you missed it, she said, her gaze holding his, because you stopped to help me. He gave a small shrug, trying to mask the storm inside him. You were stuck in the rain. Didn't feel like much of a choice. Victoria's lips quirked in something close to a smile. Most people would have driven past, or taken my money and disappeared. But you didn't. The SUV turned sharply, climbing a winding road toward a cluster of glass towers that shimmered above the city like a crown. Adrian had only ever seen them from a distance, usually while delivering packages or scraping together side jobs. Now he was in the heart of it, staring at his own reflection in mirrored glass. Victoria tapped the folder in her lap. I've read your file. My file? Adrian asked, brows knitting. Yes. I keep an eye on candidates for certain positions. She paused. Your resume isn't conventional. Marine veteran, small business owner, volunteer work. Resourceful. But HR didn't think you'd make it past their process. Said you were too rough around the edges. Adrian's stomach knotted. They weren't wrong. I didn't even get in the room. Her gaze softened, though her tone stayed firm. That's the flaw in the system. The wrong people decide who gets a chance. I prefer to see for myself. She leaned back, eyes never leaving his. And this morning, I did. The SUV descended into an underground garage beneath one of the tallest towers. The heavy doors closed behind them, shutting out the storm. Adrian shifted uneasily, his wet clothes leaving dark patches on the spotless leather seat. Victoria set the folder aside, her expression unreadable. You've got one chance to prove yourself, Mr. Ward. Not in 6 months. Not next week. Right now. Adrian arched an eyebrow. What's the catch? No catch, she said smoothly. Just a problem no one else has been able to solve. They entered a private elevator. The polished chrome walls reflected Adrian's tired face, the water dripping from his cap, his boots squeaking on the marble floor. He felt like he didn't belong in this gleaming world. Yet Victoria stood beside him calm, composed, as though she'd already decided he did. When the doors opened, chaos rushed in. Phones rang incessantly, voices overlapped, and a massive screen flashed in bold red letters. System failure. Employees hurried down the hall clutching papers, their faces pale with panic. "Conference room now," Victoria called, her voice slicing through the noise. 3 senior staff members scrambled to follow. She gestured for Adrian to join them. Inside, glass walls framed a rain-streaked skyline. The long table was littered with laptops, half-empty coffee cups, and diagrams that looked like blueprints of a battlefield. A gray-haired man wiped sweat from his brow. "Victoria, the distribution tracking system crashed last night. Shipments in 6 states are unaccounted for. If we don't restore it today, we're looking at millions in penalties." "Millions, and lost clients," another added grimly. 3 have already called, threatening to walk. Victoria dropped into her chair, gaze razor-sharp. "So fix it." The room fell silent. The gray-haired man cleared his throat. "Our IT lead says it could take a week. Maybe longer." Adrian's eyes fell on the diagrams. Something about the layout tugged at his memory. He stepped closer, scanning the lines of code and maps spread across the table. His brow furrowed. "This," his voice cut through the tension, "this is your logistics dashboard." All eyes turned toward him, as though they'd forgotten he was even there. Victoria narrowed her gaze. "You know it. I've seen systems like it before. In the Marines, for supply drops, and in my shop, for tracking parts. Your servers aren't down. They're misaligned, like the right puzzle pieces, but the wrong picture on the box." A younger employee scoffed under his breath. "And you figured that out just by looking?" Adrian's voice didn't waver. "I've spent most of my adult life keeping things running with half the tools and no time. This isn't magic. It's pattern recognition." Victoria leaned back slowly, her eyes fixed on him, part challenge, part curiosity. "Then show me." Adrian rolled up his sleeves, stepped to a laptop, and began to type. The room fell silent except for the rapid clatter of keys. Adrian's fingers moved with precision across the keyboard, his focus absolute. The storm outside faded to nothing. Only the glow of the screen and the hum of the system filled his world. He bypassed layers of polished user interfaces until he reached the raw data beneath, the place where real problems lived. The executives watched in tense silence, their disbelief mounting as lines of code and diagnostics streamed past. Every so often, Adrian muttered under his breath, piecing together fragments like a soldier decoding enemy signals. His mind moved the way it had on the battlefield. Fast, instinctive, certain. Minutes stretched. Then, at the 40-minute mark, the red warning on the giant wall screen blinked once, then disappeared, replaced by a clean, steady green. System restored. The room exhaled in unison. The gray-haired manager gripped the edge of the table as if to steady himself. How did you do that? That should have taken days." Adrian leaned back, closing the laptop with a click. "You were looking for the problem in the wrong place. The system wasn't broken. It was misaligned. I just reset the pieces." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, like the release of held breath, the room erupted. One executive shook Adrian's hand with both of his. Another muttered, half to himself, "We need him on payroll yesterday." Victoria said nothing. She simply stood, collected the folder from the table, and gestured for Adrian to follow. Together, they stepped out of the chaos and into her private office. Floor-to-ceiling glass opened to a sweeping view of the city, the rain now thinning to mist. A polished oak desk stood at the center, its surface neat except for a single silver pen. Adrian felt out of place again, dripping water onto marble floors that gleamed like mirrors. "I didn't mean to step on your team's toes," he said quietly. "I just hate seeing something broken when I know how to fix it." Victoria set the folder down with deliberate care. Her voice was calm, certain, like a verdict already reached. "And that is exactly why I want you here." Adrian blinked. "Here? You mean full-time?" she interrupted smoothly. "Head of Logistics Operations. 6-figure salary. Full benefits. Room to grow." His heart thudded. 6 figures. More than he had ever made in his life. Enough to pay rent on time. Enough to buy his son new shoes. Enough to finally breathe. "You don't even know if I'm—" he began. "I know enough," she cut in firmly. You put a stranger ahead of yourself this morning. You walked into a problem my team said would take a week and solved it in less than an hour. And when I offered you money, you refused it. That tells me everything I need to know." Adrian's throat tightened. He thought of his son, of their small apartment, of counting coins at the grocery store. The vision blurred his eyes, but he forced himself to steady his voice. Victoria leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "You missed your interview, Mr. Ward. But you made a bigger impression than you ever could have in that room. So I'll ask you once, do you want the job?" Adrian drew a slow breath, then nodded. Yeah, I do." A small smile tugged at her lips as she extended her hand. "Then welcome to Hale Dynamics." As he took her hand, a quiet warmth spread through him, relief, gratitude, and the unshakable sense that his life had just changed forever. When Adrian stepped out of Victoria Hale's office an hour later, a signed contract tucked under his arm, the storm had finally passed. The sky above the city was breaking open, streaks of silver sunlight pushing through the thinning clouds. The glass towers shimmered in the fragile light, as if the world itself had shifted to mark the moment. He walked slowly, almost dazed, his boots squeaking faintly on the marble floors of the lobby. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the familiar weight pressing down on his shoulders. The bills, the rent, the constant gnawing fear of not being enough, it all seemed to loosen its grip. Outside, the streets were slick with rain, glowing like mirrors under the weak sun. Adrian paused, staring at his reflection in a puddle. He didn't see the man who had trudged through the storm hours earlier, drenched and defeated. He saw someone new, someone who had been tested and chosen. The thought of his son tightened his chest. No more nights of worry about whether dinner would stretch until payday. No more patching old sneakers with duct tape. For the first time, Adrian could picture a real future, a home that felt safe, a childhood for his boy free from fear. A sleek black SUV eased past, the same one that had picked him up hours ago. Its tinted window slid down just enough for Adrian to catch Victoria's eyes one last time. She gave a nod, silent, assured, final, before the car pulled into traffic and disappeared into the city. Adrian drew in a long breath, the cool air filling his lungs like a promise. He tightened his grip on the folder in his hand. For years he had felt trapped, stuck in the mud of circumstance, sinking deeper with every struggle. But today proved something else, that one choice, one act of selfless courage, could shift everything. And as he turned toward home, the sunlight warming his face, Adrian Ward knew this was only the beginning. Adrian drove his old truck through the city streets, the signed contract lying safely on the passenger seat. The windshield wipers dragged lazily now, pushing aside only a drizzle. For the first time in years, he wasn't rushing toward another odd job or chasing a paycheck that would vanish the moment it arrived. He was heading home with something more solid, a future. His mind spun with images. His son, Ethan, running through the apartment door in his worn sneakers. The look on his boy's face when Adrian told him he'd landed a real job, one that paid more than enough. 4 years, Adrian had carried the guilt of promises half kept, birthdays with second-hand gifts, nights when dinner was little more than canned soup. Today, that weight felt lighter. Yet underneath the relief, unease stirred. He had just walked into a world that wasn't his. A polished glass tower filled with people in pressed suits and expensive watches. A place where words mattered as much as actions, where mistakes carried a cost measured in millions. Adrian was a soldier, a mechanic, a man who fixed what was broken with his hands. Could he really belong there? At a red light, he rubbed his face with a tired hand. The storm clouds above had thinned, but they hadn't vanished. Neither had the storms inside him. Responsibility was no longer just about survival. It was about proving himself in a world that would question him at every step. The light turned green. Adrian pressed the gas and whispered under his breath, as if to steady himself, one step at a time. When he pulled into the cracked parking lot of his apartment building, Ethan was already waiting by the window, his small frame outlined against the glass. The boy darted out the door barefoot, his face lighting up when he saw his father. "Dad, you're home." Ethan's voice carried a joy Adrian hadn't heard in too long. Adrian crouched, pulling his son into his arms, holding him tight against his chest. "Yeah, buddy. And I've got something to tell you. Everything's about to change." The boy pulled back, eyes wide, searching his father's face. Change. Good change. Adrian smiled, though his throat tightened. The best kind. As he carried Ethan inside, he knew the real test was only beginning. Winning a job was one thing. Keeping it, proving he was worthy of it, that was another battle altogether. And battles, Adrian Ward knew well. The morning sun cut through thin clouds, casting silver streaks across the skyline. Adrian stood at the base of Hale Dynamics' glass tower, his old truck parked 2 blocks away like a relic in a world of luxury sedans. He tugged at the borrowed tie around his neck, his palms damp despite the crisp air. Inside, the lobby gleamed like a palace of steel and light. Polished marble floors reflected his every hesitant step, and towering glass walls made him feel smaller with each breath. The employees who streamed past moved with purpose, sleek suits, sharp heels, lanyards glinting under the lights. Adrian's flannel shirt and worn boots had been replaced with clothes from a thrift shop, but he still felt out of place, like a soldier dropped behind enemy lines. When the elevator doors opened on the logistics floor, the hum of keyboards and clipped conversations filled the air. Heads turned. Some eyes flicked over him with curiosity, others with skepticism. Word had already spread about the stranger who fixed the system in under an hour. But admiration was mixed with doubt. Could he do it again, or had it been luck? A young man with a tailored blazer leaned back in his chair, smirking. "So you're the miracle worker," he said loud enough for half the room to hear. "Fixed in 40 minutes what our team couldn't touch in 2 days." His tone dripped with sarcasm. "Guess we should all be taking notes." The room chuckled softly, though unease rippled beneath it. Adrian didn't flinch. He had heard worse on the battlefield, harsher in back-alley jobs where respect was earned in silence. He simply walked to the desk assigned to him, dropped his folder, and met the young man's gaze. "I don't care about titles," Adrian said evenly. "I'm here to work. You'll see soon enough if I'm worth the chair I'm sitting in." The laughter died. The smirk faded. And for a moment, the only sound was the quiet hum of servers in the background. Then a calm, authoritative voice broke the tension. "That's exactly why he's here." Victoria Hale stepped into the room, her presence commanding instant silence. Every spine straightened, every eye shifted to her. She looked at Adrian once, with the faintest nod of approval, before turning to the team. "Mr. Ward isn't here by chance," she said. "He's here because when systems collapse, he doesn't panic, he fixes them. I expect you to treat him as you would me." "Understood." A chorus of "Yes, ma'am" followed, though not all voices carried the same conviction. Adrian lowered himself into his chair, the weight of dozens of eyes still pressing on him. He opened the first file, the diagrams and schedules spreading across the screen like a battlefield map. This wasn't mud or rain anymore. This was a war of numbers, deadlines, and trust. And Adrian Ward was ready to fight it. The day had barely begun when alarms rippled across the logistics floor. Red alerts flashed on multiple screens, employees sprang to their feet, and the air filled with the rapid clatter of keyboards. Adrian looked up from his desk, the glow of urgency reflected in his eyes. "Shipment 342 just disappeared from the network," a woman called out, her voice sharp with panic. "It left the Denver hub last night, but now it's gone. No signal, no coordinates, nothing." Another man muttered, pale and sweating. "That shipment is worth $5 million in components. If we can't account for it by noon, the client will terminate the contract." Whispers cut through the room like blades. Some glanced toward Adrian, doubt gleaming in their eyes. Others waited, unsure if the stranger in thrift shop clothes could rise to the challenge twice. The young man who had mocked him yesterday leaned back, smirking again. "Well, miracle worker. Still got that magic touch." Adrian rose from his chair slowly, steady as stone. "Show me the logs." The woman hesitated, then handed him her tablet. Adrian scrolled through the data, his brows knitting. He saw patterns where others saw chaos, numbers out of sync, timing that didn't match the flow of distribution. To him it looked familiar, like a battlefield map with one unit lost behind enemy lines. "This isn't a lost shipment," Adrian said firmly. "It's a miscommunication between hubs. The cargo's still moving, it's just tagged under the wrong route." Skepticism rippled through the room. "You can't know that," the blazer-clad man scoffed. Adrian ignored him. He pulled up the central console, fingers flying across the keys. Layer by layer, he stripped away the polished dashboards until raw coordinates filled the screen. Then, like a spark in the dark, he found it. There, he said, pointing at a blinking marker hidden deep in mislabeled data. Shipment 342. It's not lost, it's halfway to Kansas under the wrong code. Gasps rippled across the room. The woman who'd been panicked now whispered, "He's right. The system tagged it as 324, not 342. We never would have caught it in time." Adrian leaned back, arms folded. "Get me the reroute authorization, and I'll push it back on track." Victoria's voice cut through the stunned silence. She had been watching from the doorway, her expression unreadable until now. "Do it." Within minutes, Adrian had rerouted the shipment, the screens flashing green one by one as the cargo fell back into the correct lane. The room exhaled in relief. The young man in the blazer muttered, "Luck," but even he couldn't mask the fear in his eyes. Victoria stepped forward, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. Luck doesn't save millions in under 10 minutes. Skill does. Discipline does. And trust will. She looked at the team, then directly at Adrian. "This is the standard from today onward." The room fell silent, a new current pulsing through the air, respect mixed with awe. For the first time, Adrian felt the tide shift. They didn't see him as an intruder anymore. They saw him as a leader. And as he lowered himself back into his chair, Adrian Ward understood something deep in his chest. The storm had only brought him here. The real battle was just beginning. The crisis passed, but its echo lingered. For the first time since Adrian Ward had set foot in Hale Dynamics, the logistics floor moved with a rhythm that felt almost synchronized. People whispered less, glanced his way more, and when problems arose, their eyes sought him out before the managers. Respect was beginning to take root. But where respect grows, envy often follows. The young man in the tailored blazer, his name was Carter Blake, leaned against the doorway of the break room, watching Adrian pour himself a bitter cup of coffee from the communal pot. His smirk had faded since the shipment fiasco, replaced with a sharper expression, one edged with calculation. "Not bad," Carter said smoothly. 2 wins in 2 days. That's a streak most people here never see." Adrian took a sip, his face unreadable. "It's not a game. It's work. Maybe to you." Carter's voice dropped lower, sharp as glass. "But around here, every move is politics. You step into the wrong shoes, and someone's going to make sure you trip." Adrian set the mug down, meeting his gaze without flinching. "Then I'll just keep walking." Carter chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "We'll see." He pushed off the doorframe and disappeared into the hallway. Adrian returned to his desk, the tension coiling in his shoulders. He wasn't naive. He'd seen this before: jealousy among soldiers, rivalry in the Marines, men who'd rather see the mission fail than watch someone else succeed. The difference was, out there, loyalty meant survival. In here, loyalty was currency, and Adrian had just raised his value. Later that afternoon, Victoria called a meeting in the glass-walled conference room. Adrian sat at one end of the table, opposite a spread of managers and analysts. Charts flickered across the big screen, red bars and warning signals painting a bleak picture. "We're still weeks behind on 2 major accounts," one manager said. "Even with today's reroute, penalties are coming. If we lose these clients, we're talking layoffs." Adrian scanned the data, his jaw tightening. He recognized the mistakes: inefficient routes, bloated processes, decisions made by people who had never set foot in a warehouse or driven a delivery truck. "This isn't just numbers," Adrian said, his voice steady. "It's people making decisions without knowing the ground. You've got a system built for convenience, not for survival. If you want to fix this, you don't need another dashboard. You need to tear down the way you move supplies and rebuild it from the ground up." The room fell silent. Some stared at him like he was reckless, others like he was brilliant. Victoria leaned back in her chair, her eyes sharp. "That's a bold claim, Mr. Ward. And it sounds like you already know where to start." Adrian's pulse quickened. He wasn't here to impress them with speeches. He was here to work. But if this was the moment to prove he belonged, he wouldn't hesitate. "Yes," he said firmly. I do. The storm outside the windows had returned, thunder rolling in the distance. Inside, the air was charged with a different kind of electricity. Adrian could feel it, trust beginning to grow, doubt sharpening in the shadows, and a battle for his place in this world just beginning to unfold. The rain drummed softly against the glass walls as Adrian stood before the logistics team, a new plan glowing on the screen behind him. His voice was calm but steady, carrying the weight of someone who had lived through pressure greater than this boardroom could ever create. We stopped patching holes, Adrian said. No more waiting for fires to burn before we grab the buckets. We redesign the routes. We cut the waste. And we bring decision-making back to people who actually move the shipments, not just read the numbers. Some faces lit with cautious hope. Others frowned, uncertain. It was a plan that would shake the system at its core, risky, ambitious, but necessary. Victoria leaned forward, her sharp eyes fixed on him. You're proposing to dismantle a process that's been in place for 10 years. If this fails, the cost is catastrophic. If it works, she paused, and the silence stretched like a blade. You'll change the way we operate entirely. Adrian nodded once. Then let me prove it works. Give me 1 week. The room erupted in murmurs. A week. Too short, too bold, too reckless. But Victoria only raised her hand, silencing them. You have it. 1 week. Across the table, Carter Blake's jaw tightened. He masked it quickly, but not before Adrian caught the flicker of disdain in his eyes. Later that evening, long after most employees had gone home, Carter lingered at his desk. The glow of his monitor painted his face in cold light. He opened a private message chain, fingers tapping quickly across the keyboard. He's moving too fast, Carter wrote. If he gets credit for this, the rest of us are invisible. I'll make sure he stumbles. People will question his miracle when they see him fail. The reply came seconds later. Careful. Hale trusts him now. Carter's lips curled into a thin smile. Trust can be broken. Meanwhile, Adrian sat alone at his modest kitchen table, blueprints and route maps spread before him. Ethan slept in the next room, his soft breathing the only sound beyond the ticking clock. Adrian rubbed his tired eyes but kept working. He had faced deserts and jungles, led men through battles where failure meant lives lost. Now the war was different, but the stakes, in their own way, felt just as high. This was more than a job. It was survival, dignity, a chance to give his son the life he deserved. And as lightning flared across the city skyline, Adrian swore to himself he would not fail. The next morning, the logistics floor buzzed with unusual energy. Adrian stood at the head of the room, giving clear instructions as teams prepared to test his new routing system. For once, there was focus instead of panic, momentum instead of hesitation. Denver Hub adjusts first, Adrian said firmly. Then Dallas. Each route will sync in a chain. No gaps, no delays. If the pieces lock in, we cut time by 30%. His confidence steadied the room. Workers who had doubted him now moved with purpose, their faith growing step by step. But Carter Blake leaned casually against his desk, watching with sharp eyes. By noon, the first shipments were flowing. Reports lit up the big screen in green, each successful adjustment sparking murmurs of relief. For a moment, it looked as though Adrian's gamble would pay off. Then, suddenly, a red alert pulsed across the screen. Shipment 511. Critical delay. The room tensed. Adrian strode to the console, his fingers racing over the keys. The data didn't make sense, routes misaligned, trucks diverted to the wrong depots. It was as if someone had scrambled the system. This doesn't add up, Adrian muttered. The instructions were clear. The system shouldn't have done this. Carter's voice cut through the tension, cool and poisonous. Maybe the problem isn't the system. Maybe it's the man trying to run it. Whispers spread like fire. Eyes flicked between Carter and Adrian, doubt creeping back in. Adrian ignored the bait. He dug deeper, bypassing the surface data until he reached the raw logs. His jaw tightened. Someone had altered the code, slight changes, just enough to break the chain without being obvious. Sabotage. He didn't say it aloud, not yet. Without proof, it would sound like an excuse. But the truth gnawed at him. Someone wanted him to fail, and they were willing to take the whole system down with him. The pressure in the room mounted. Victoria Hale appeared in the doorway, her gaze sweeping over the frozen team before landing on Adrian. "Well, can you fix it?" Her tone carried no warmth, only the expectation of results. The room held its breath. Adrian straightened, his pulse steadying as if he were back in combat. "Yes," he said simply. "But I'll need control of the system, every layer, no restrictions." Victoria's eyes narrowed. It was a dangerous request. But then she gave a single nod. "Do it." Adrian rolled up his sleeves. The storm wasn't outside anymore. It was here, in the heart of Hale Dynamics. And someone in this very room had unleashed it. The room pulsed with tension as Adrian slid into the operator's chair, the glow of multiple screens illuminating his determined face. Dozens of eyes fixed on him, waiting, doubting, hoping. "Every second this delay continues costs us thousands," one manager whispered, sweat on his brow. "If it spreads to the other hubs." "It won't," Adrian cut in, his voice steady. "Not if I can lock the system down now." His fingers flew across the keys, stripping away polished dashboards until nothing remained but lines of raw code and routing commands. The red alerts multiplied, blinking like warning flares across the network. Trucks were circling, shipments rerouted into dead ends, deliveries collapsing in real time. Adrian's breath slowed, his focus narrowing. It felt like combat again, the chaos of men shouting, radios crackling, maps changing every minute. Back then, one wrong call meant lives lost. Now, it meant millions, maybe the end of his second chance. "Come on," he muttered under his breath. "Show me where you hid it." And then he found it. Small, deliberate alterations buried deep in the code, hidden under layers of routine updates. Not an accident. A hand had moved these pieces. He traced the signature of the edits, timestamps that lined up perfectly with Carter Blake's login. Proof. Adrian's chest tightened, but he didn't look up. Not yet. He had a system to save. Denver Hub, reboot sequence now. Dallas, hold for 30 seconds, then sync on my mark, Adrian ordered, his voice sharp, commanding. The teams obeyed without hesitation, their earlier doubts drowned in the urgency of his tone. Green lights began to flicker back to life. One by one, the hubs realigned, trucks pulling back into correct routes, data streams snapping into place like soldiers falling into formation. Finally, the massive red alert on the main screen blinked twice, then vanished. In its place, all systems stable. The room erupted in relief. Applause, cheers, even a few shouts of disbelief. But Adrian stayed seated, his gaze locked on the frozen line of code still glowing before him. He turned slowly toward Carter, who sat stiffly at his desk, the smirk gone, replaced by a thin mask of composure. "I'll need to know who has access to the update protocols," Adrian said evenly, though his eyes never left Carter's. "Because someone just tried to sink this company from the inside." The room went silent again. Victoria Hale stepped forward, her gaze flicking between Adrian and Carter, sharp as a blade. "Mr. Ward," she said, her voice cool but resolute, "bring me the proof." Adrian nodded. He already had it. And he knew the storm inside Hale Dynamics was far from over. Morning light spilled across the skyline as Adrian stood in the top-floor conference room, the city stretching out beneath the glass walls. Around the long polished table sat Victoria Hale and her senior executives, their faces tense with expectation. The air felt heavy, charged like the moment before a storm breaks. Adrian placed a small drive on the table and connected it to the main screen. "This," he began, his voice low but steady, "is the log of every system update made in the last 48 hours. Lines of code and timestamps filled the display, glowing cold blue against the room's silence. He highlighted a sequence buried deep within the system. These are the edits that caused Shipment 511 to vanish from the grid. Deliberate misroutes, mislabeled tags, errors no accident could create." The room shifted uneasily. Victoria leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Whose credentials?" Adrian tapped the screen. A single name appeared. Carter Blake. Gasps rippled through the table. Carter's face drained of color, but he quickly masked it with a sneer. "This is ridiculous. Anyone could have spoofed my login. He's framing me to cover his own mistakes." Adrian didn't flinch. He pulled up a second file, video footage from the security logs. There, clear as daylight, was Carter at his desk the previous evening, his fingers flying over the keyboard, his screen glowing with the same strings of code. The silence was absolute. Victoria's gaze locked on Carter, her voice sharp as glass. "Do you have anything to say before I revoke your credentials and escort you out of this building?" Carter opened his mouth, but no words came. The fight drained from him as security stepped quietly into the room. He stood, shoulders rigid, and walked out without looking back. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving only the echo of his downfall. Victoria turned back to Adrian. For a moment, her stern expression softened. "You not only saved this company twice, you exposed rot that could have destroyed us from within." Adrian met her gaze, still steady, though his chest felt tight. "I didn't do it for praise. I did it because I don't walk away when something's broken." A quiet smile touched Victoria's lips. She rose from her chair, extended her hand, and said, "Then consider this official. Head of Logistics Operations. Full authority, full trust." Adrian shook her hand. The weight of the moment pressed through him, relief, pride, and something deeper. The knowledge that for once, he wasn't just surviving. He was building. When he left the tower that evening, the rain had vanished completely. The city glowed under a clear sky, streets shimmering with golden light. He thought of Ethan waiting at home, of new shoes and warm dinners, of a childhood that might finally be free from struggle. Adrian Ward had walked into the storm a desperate man. He walked out of it a leader, a provider, and a father who had kept his promise. And for the first time in years, he knew he was no longer stuck in the mud.